what should folks be focusing on in the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to be realistic, but, audacious enough that you're actually going to make some changes. And, John, I'm a brain guy, so I do think about a lot of these things from the perspective of the brain. It is often said what is good for the heart is also good for the brain. But there's some differences as well. So I break it down into sort of these three pillars of health, which are going to sound familiar to people, but it's basically movement, which I use that word instead of exercise, nourishment, I use that word instead of diet, and rest.
Of course, movement or exercise is at the top of your list. Now, you're a runner, which makes me envious and jealous and deeply admiring. But for the rest of us who maybe aren't built quite that way, is there a prescription for how much exercise we need to be getting?
Well, this is a really interesting point, and I think we're seeing a shift in terms of how we think about this. There's still guidelines. People say there's 150 minutes that you should be getting of exercise every week. It may or may not surprise you, John, to know that about 80% of Americans do not hit that goal. So that's just sort of a starting point. But I also, more fundamentally, John, I am a runner, but I also am a believer that the human body wasn't designed to sit or lie for 23 hours a day and then go for a run for an hour. We were designed to be moving all day long. That is when we function best in terms of all these different processes in our body.
Now, losing weight, of course, is at the bottom of all this, always a perennial popular New Year's resolution. But while more exercise is key, there's the other side of the equation. So what should we know about eating?
Well, again, there's some cultural shifts in this. And, one thought I'd like to tell people and remind people is that when you eat, when you're actually consuming food, it is the most consistent message we are giving to our bodies, a message from our outside world to our inside world. It's a signal. Think of it like that. We think of it in terms of calories and palate and taste, understandably, but it's a signal to our bodies. And there's an army of microorganisms, for example, in our gut, our microbiome, which stand at the ready to be able to interpret that signal and do something about it. I spent some time for my podcast talking to Dr. Uma Naidu. She's a psychiatrist, nutrition chef, sort of this triple threat. Just listen to how she put this.
If we're eating for our inside of our body, the outside will follow, because by taking care of our brain, our gut, the rest of our organs, the weight will come off because we're going to be eating healthier foods.
So again, this is a way of thinking about it, but let me take it a step further, that a lot of people have told me, especially over these last couple of years, I want to increase my immunity. I want to build up my immunity. Now, what does that mean exactly, right? Well, 80% of your immunity lies within your gut. It's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. It is that microbiome that I'm talking about. And there are ways to create a healthier microbiome that can help inoculate you from illness. And it works so quickly. When I talk to these scientists, what you had for breakfast on any given day could influence how sick you might get to an infection or something else later on that night. So, when you're thinking about eating that way, you will eat better. The weight will come off, as Dr. Naidu said, if that's the goal. But you're going to get all these ancillary benefits. Best microbiome, a diverse one. So eat different foods. That's the key.
A fascinating way of
eat different
approaching it.
foods.
All right, lastly, we come to rest. And I know you've confessed you don't always get enough sleep, and I resemble that remark myself. So how important is shut-eye to a holistically healthy body?
Well, can I just say, John, I do not brag about being able to get a lot done on little sleep anymore. That used to be a point of pride, I think, for a lot of people. I don't think of it that way anymore at all. When you look at the science and just basic things, like I'm in my early 50s now, you start to think about things. When you look at the data and you say people who get less than 6 hours of sleep, there's a significant correlation for those people potentially going from being pre-diabetic to diabetic, 44% increased risk. So if you're like someone, hey, I'm doing pretty good so far, I'm not diabetic, but I'm worried about it. If you're not getting enough sleep, that could push you over the edge. These are more concrete sort of, things that have come to light. But I think, the what and the why, when I try and explain these things, I can tell you what you should do, but the why, I think, makes it stick. So why do you sleep? There's all sorts of different things, but two things I think always come to my mind. One is that it is a time when you consolidate memories. So you've had these amazing experiences throughout the day, maybe throughout this holiday season. 3-4 years from now, you want to remember them, very clearly. If you sleep well, that is when those short-term memories get sort of imprinted into long-term memories. For a lot of us, it's not that we forget things, it's that we never really remembered them because we're not getting enough sleep. The other thing I'll add to that is that we have this constant rinse cycle that happens in our body. It's our lymph glands. Well, there's a similar sort of system that happens in the brain, where you're basically clearing away the metabolic waste that can be problematic later on in life if it accumulates. At night, when you sleep, is when you are typically clearing most of that waste away. You're constantly doing it, but the most efficient time is at night. So cleaning out the waste, consolidating memories, and people's moods and everything else obviously improved as well.
Sounds like a pretty good deal all around. Dr. Sanjay Gupta with crucial advice for mind, body, and spirit, as it turns out.